Hi, this is Dr. Eric Westman here with Adapt Your Life Live. I'd like to just kind of give an update on the keto diet as of May 2019, and of course also talk about the upcoming Adapt events that are happening. We will be in Chicago, Illinois, July 13. Dr. Naomi Perella and Dr. Inbar Kirsan are friends of mine, colleagues of mine from the Obesity Medicine Association. So please join us in Chicago, July 13 for an ADAPT event. Then we'll be in White Bear Lake, Minnesota, which is near Minneapolis, for July 20th with an ADAPT event. And there'll be local doctors, Dr. Tim Noonan, Dr. Sean O'Mara, Dr. Paul Ratti, Katie Newman, Maria Emmerich. It'll be fun to be in Maria's neck of the woods, so to speak, there in Minnesota. Then the ADAPT team will be going to Terre Haute, Indiana on July 27th. So please join us there. Amy Berger, who wrote The Alzheimer's Antidote, Natasha Newton, who wrote Southern Keto, will be there as well. So these are weekend events, Saturday events. You don't have to travel very far. You don't have to pay much money. You get to be with keto followers. We did some ADAPT events in February in the US, and we went through Atlanta, Nashville, Tampa with 200 to 300 people coming out on a Saturday to share what they know about keto, their success stories. It's really a great time. So a little bit about 2019 in keto. Again, my name is Dr. Eric Westman. I've been studying and using a keto diet in a clinical setting since 1998. So we were one of the two teams in the US to look at the safety and healthiness or unhealthiness of a keto diet, and going against what people thought, it turned out to be a healthy thing to do. And so for me, learning about it and thinking, oh, it must be bad, happened to me 20 years ago. And so we've been using a keto approach since that time, and we've not seen all of the terrible things that people predicted would happen. So Dr. Jeff Volek at Ohio State and Dr. Yancey and I here at Duke were two research teams that have been studying this approach now for 20 years in the US. In my clinic at Duke, the saying I have is that if you do it, it'll work. And I try to keep a simple approach, like giving a prescription to somebody. So we have a very uncomplicated, simple approach to doing a keto diet. And it turns out that that's sort of my role these days, is to uncomplicate things when people learn a newer way of keto that might make you think you have to have products and all these other things. So our success rate for obesity and diabetes and many other medical conditions is very high. In fact, it's almost universal if you do it. Of course, not everyone wants to do it or tries it and needs help doing it over time, which is why we have the support team and supporting people with support Facebook groups. Local support groups are very helpful with any lifestyle change, including a keto one. So, the keto diet has evolved over time. When I started looking at this, we really called it a low-carb keto approach. It was the first phase of the Atkins diet. It was called Protein Power by Mike and Mary Dan Eads, who wrote their book. It was called The Diabetes Solution by Dr. Dick Bernstein. These are all doctors in the mid-1900s who used this approach, but of course they borrowed it from the doctors before them, and this was first called the Banting diet, going back 150 years ago. So the use of a low-carb keto diet, so again, the best way to be in ketosis is to keep the carbs really low. That method goes way back. 100 years ago, the keto diet is what was used to treat diabetes and obesity. And then these medications for diabetes came out, so that there was a shift. The medical world started treating people with medications instead of doing the strict low-carb keto diet. So in 2000, early 2000s, the studies started going, looking at the clinical trials of low-carb diets versus low-fat diets, and now there are studies of studies called meta-analyses that actually, when you line them up, it's not that low-fat diets can't work, it's just that low-carb diets work as well, and in most cases work better. There's better appetite suppression and a larger amount of weight loss. So the main change over the last 10, 15 years is that there's science backing up the keto approach, unlike for any other dietary approach. Because everyone thought it was going to be bad, everyone wanted to take a shot at showing the diet was bad, and it wasn't bad. So that's how we get to keto today. There's kind of a blending of the low-carb diet for type 2 diabetes and obesity. There's a merging of the keto diet for epilepsy, which has brought in the idea of macro counting and making every meal be very careful as to the proteins and fats. And then there's the merging of the paleo diet and primal diet, which draws attention to the food quality. And all of these things have come together for Keto 2019 to be a wonderful yet also confusing amount of information if you just say go to the internet and try to find out what to do. So I find that the simple system that we use and that has been used for the last 150 years is actually a very effective tool that will work when other people are trying, but it doesn't make sense, or they're drinking too much fats and oils and that sort of thing. But the science is solid now that not only is it therapeutic for diabetes and obesity, but it's actually, I think, just a generally healthy way of eating. There's no human requirement to eat sugar or starch, and at a first principles, that's what the keto diet is. It's taking the sugars and starches out of the food. A common question I get these days is how to get your doctor on board. We went through the ADAPT events in Atlanta, Nashville, and Tampa, and we're going to be in the Midwest this summer. And a common question I get, especially last weekend in Minnesota, was up in Brainerd, Minnesota. People say, what do I do if my doctor isn't on board? How do I get my doctor on board? And it's a interesting phenomenon that some doctors are totally keto friendly and others are still very resistant, like I was 20 years ago. So I've done a lot of teaching for other doctors, particularly in the Obesity Medicine Association meetings, and we're just starting to get back into the cardiology meetings with Blair O'Neill, who is a past president of the Canadian Cardiology Association. But the medical mainstream has been so drug-centered that they really don't understand, or in fact they might even be resistant or tell you not to do a keto diet. So if you have a doctor like that, it's hard to convince them. You might just say, can we agree to disagree, especially if you're having all this success and the doctor says don't do it. Not all doctors are up to speed on this. Now, if your doctor does understand it, great. But I see this as healthy eating. You don't even need a doctor if you're not on any medicines or you don't have any medical problems. I think this is a fine, healthy thing to do. But if you are on medications, I just checked today. Probably the best source of helping your doctor to learn about this. Let's say your doctor doesn't know, not familiar, but you want to stay with that doctor and the doctor wants to help. There's a great new resource at dietdoctor.com, and it's for doctors to learn about the diet and to learn about how to take people off medication. And that's really the fear that we have in using this diet in people who have medications, because the medicines can become too strong right away. So what you want to do is be working with a doctor who understands this if you are taking medications, or refer them to dietdoctor.com, where there's a great new resource that explains to the doctor how to deprescribe or take away the medication safely. So I wanted to hit a few highlights, like a little bit about myself, the evolution of the keto diet, and then also how to get your doctor more open or on board. More and more clinics are actually talking about using this kind of approach in multi-specialty clinics because the science has come a long way. And especially last year with some big studies on diabetes that are out, there's more of an appreciation for what can be done just by changing the food, just by changing the lifestyle, even without medications. Hello, everybody. I do see. If you have some questions, I can see you there. This live today was to also update you on a few of the conferences I've attended and what's upcoming for this fall, or excuse me, this summer. It was a great experience to be at the first Low Carb USA meeting in Seattle just a few weeks ago. Of course, that's after I came back from first meeting in Jakarta, Indonesia. The Low Carb USA helped to put that on as well, and that was just very inspirational to see a country that is relatively poor compared to the US, for example, fixing all of these medical problems just by changing the food. A great story there about how the ketofastosis warriors came about. It was a father who learned about the keto diet for his son who had medical issues. So check out a blog by Dr. Georgia Eid about our trip to Jakarta, Indonesia for the Low Carb USA Indonesia conference. I also came back this spring from a teaching conference. I was asked to speak at a hospital-based program in Shenzhen, China, and they are working to make this hospital a low-carb hospital. The story there is the doctor who is the director of the hospital fixed his own medical issues and then learned about how this can be helpful for so many other medical conditions. And so their plan is to learn as much as they can about the low-carb keto approach. And what I'm observing is that these countries are changing way before all of the problems have occurred in the US, which is great because you don't want to wait until all of the medical issues and medication treatment of chronic illness like is happening in the US. It can be fixed in relatively easy way without a whole lot of money by just changing the food. Which brings me back to a group in that came to ADAPT in Atlanta. There's a public health clinic in Athens, Georgia that's using a low-carb diet. And the reason it's very interesting is that they're not doing it for profit, they're doing it in a public health setting, allowing the teaching and helping of people with a keto diet there as well. So the ADAPT team will be coming through the Midwest. I just want to update again, and July 13 will be in Chicago, and July 20th will be outside of Minneapolis in White Bear Lake, Minnesota, which reminds me, just last weekend I was up in Brainerd, Minnesota, at the first low carb, Lakes Area Low Carb Conference. It was fantastic. 400 people came out in a local church and learning about it and all of the stories of people already doing it. The group from Minneapolis came up as well. I learned that there was the first mini Keto Fest. Carl Franklin was over there in Minneapolis with that Keto Fest conference in a mini fest in Minneapolis. Many of those support group people came up to the Brainerd, Minnesota conference. So July 13th, July 20th, and July 27th will be in Terre Haute, Indiana, and join us there. Come out on a Saturday. You'll meet people who are doing this in your area, meet doctors and other experts in your area, connect to the latest information about the keto diet at these ADAPT events. That's about it for now, and until the next time, this is Dr. Eric Westman for Adapt Your Life.